Everybody, welcome back to the PigSty tonight. Tonight we have been joined by Bionic Dance, or Kate, as her friends know her. Hopefully I'll be able to call her Kate as well. But
if you like.
Kate has been going for years. If people do not know who Kate is, her links are in the description. Her channel and Twitter are both in the description. But Kate, for those who don't know, do you want to just give them a wee introduction?
Sure. Well, my channel is called Bionic Dance, and I spend a lot of time explaining to religious believers why they're wrong. Most of my format is to take someone else's video and dissect it point by point. I also do a fair amount of animation on my channel as well.
Now, you say you've been taking the Christians apart. You've been doing that for a very long time, though. Considering the community as it's been going, you know, personally for me, the channel will be going a year in August. There's a few people 2 and 3 years. What number are you at now?
Around about 12.
Yeah, so that's a long fucking ass time. Like,
yep. When I got on board, man, the scene was really different as far as YouTube atheism is concerned. There's a lot of people who've come and gone. We used to have some really interesting events. There was the Ponage Olympics once that was organized by Richard Coughlin. And that was entertaining because we just had a whole bunch of people debunking videos and sort of like, well, I don't remember if we did it for prizes or not, but it was this big coming together of everybody, and it was really cool. Non-Stamp Collector was still making videos and all that stuff. It was a very different time, especially since Google didn't own YouTube yet.
Yeah, the technology as well was different. As you mentioned, Non-Stamp Collector, he was one of the people I found when I came into the community. It was himself, Dark Matter, and Aaron. They were the three first that I definitely remember finding. And as you say, you've been here and people have came and gone. Jim Hall, for example, we know that hopefully Jim will be back, but the reason Jim from Atheist Age was on here as part of the community and did what he did was because of yourself. Well, and a few other channels, but he definitely did mention your name as one of the influencers. So, as you said, 12 years, it's a fucking long time to be doing this.
It is. And I have to admit, I'm getting a little tired. Not tired of it, just tired. You know, like my endurance is not what it once was. I've, in the last couple of months, my output has been much less than usual. And, I gotta say, it might be getting time to retire if I have another income source, because honestly, I need a break. I need a long break. And I've got this big animated project I'm working on that's some of my best work ever. And I find myself going, YouTube video, animate. YouTube video, animate. So, you know.
Well, definitely, if you're getting tired and bored of it, the best thing you want to do, the best thing for anybody is to have an income from something that you enjoy. And you can see from your channel and over the years that it's become a wee bit more animation and a wee bit more heading in that direction. And definitely from talking to you personally, you know, anytime you sort of bring up the atheist, it's like, oh, for fuck's sake, that shit again. You want to talk about the animation. You've heard all these conversations before. You've heard all these arguments before.
How many times can you debunk Pascal's wager? You know, how many times can you address the problem of evil and how it wouldn't be a problem at all if God wasn't supposed to be perfect? You know, if God had flaws, that argument goes right away out the window. But, you know, after like the 100th debunking of that stuff, you start to go, oh, this again. Like I wish there was just a shorthand, you know, say 2 or 3 words and people go, oh, yeah, that's right. That's how you refute that crap, you know.
Yeah, you see, well, the problem with what I would find is that most people that lose their faith, and then that's it and it's done, and they then move on with their life, you know, or possibly they do what we're doing now and they spend a couple of years at it, then they move on. Being someone who's been in the community for 12 years, you know, you've seen the people come in, they've got bored and then they've left, and then you've got a new influx of new non-believers and new people, and they're like, oh, well, look at this and that and the other, and replay value only has so much on YouTube, maybe a week, maybe a month. You know, nobody goes back and looks at what videos you did 2 years ago, never mind 12.
Actually, every now and then I get those people who say, I've been binge watching your channel and I'm down to year 3 by now, you know, starting at your most recent. And I'm like, whoa, I can't believe, because I've got something like 1,500 videos. So the fact that someone will watch all of them like they're binging a series on Netflix is crazy pants to me. but flattering too.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it's nice to know the people that do that. Joan, that came into the community, she, whenever she arrived, she went through a lot of my stuff with Richard, who we were talking about earlier, and it's surprising to me, as you said, to find someone every now and again that does do that. They are few and far between. Most people just, what's happening now? What's happening next week? What have you got coming up the next couple of days,
Yeah.
As you said, go on ahead.
No, keep going.
I was saying, just as the fact that you have to repeat yourself to create that content to keep the people coming back, it can be quite repetitive.
I've said many times that what I'm doing is activism, that I care about the abuses of religious people, like by religious people, of folks who are victims, like in one way or another. And I'm continuing to do this over so many years because there are people who don't have the message yet.
Yes.
Because of those people who haven't come out of religion yet. I mean, I remember we were talking about people who, like you say, went about their own lives after deconverting or whatever. I remember a YouTuber, he went by, and probably still does, by Mr. Repzion. And I remember subscribing to his channel and really enjoying watching what he did. But then after a while, the atheism content tapered off. And I was like, what happened? And he goes, well, I said everything. And I guess for him it was catharsis.
Yeah.
But for me, like I say, activism, which is why I've kept going as long as I have.
Well, see, it takes people like yourself, and as I say, I'm only in the community 2 years, but it's important to me, the activism, the actual trying to do things to help people in the community, to help get the word out, and to do things actually in the physical real world, because we need the support of people in the wider area. It's okay having a friend here and a friend there, but when you go to vote, you're not a block. When you go to change something, you're not a block. When you go to protest, you're just one guy. We need to get the word out, and we need to do that. And people like yourself and Aaron Ra that continue to stay in the scene, it is necessary to get notoriety outside of the scene to see that these things can be done. You can't just flitter in and flitter out, You look at these people who do be politicians and do these things. It's a 10-year career they've put into it. It's not just 1 or 2 months.
Yep. Although, I mean, I think that, the curtain's coming down a bit and you can see the strings of these people who are like uber religious, and the public is now starting to understand just how nutty they really are.
Yeah.
Like some of the stuff that they say is going to happen, some of the stuff they say they need, this, that, and the other thing is just like, can this possibly be serious?
And I don't want to use the word paradigm shift or anything like that, but I can see the youth that's coming up now are an awful lot more liberal, than what could have been. Like we did have in the past, we've had the gay rights movement and we've had the women's rights movement and things like that there now, but they were done by a small minority in that area, and it gradually grew and grew. Right now with the internet and the things and the way we can connect with people across the world, the Black Lives Movement that's happening right now, it started in America, it's spread across the world, there's pictures, there's videos, and there's an influence there. If that was in the 50s, a week later you'd see it in a newspaper in UK, if at all.
Well, I have to wonder, I mean, if we had the internet in the 1950s, what might have happened? I mean, I think like people going on marches, people protesting, people learning that they don't have to be religious and all of that stuff. I'm sure a lot of it just happens because of the information age, because we have such ready access to other points of view. I think that it's inevitable that people are going to start rejecting what they see as traditional and harmful.
Well, that's it. Anyone born after, 1995 grew up in the era that information was available to them at any time, straight away. Maybe not at the palm of their hand that it is now, but information was there, and the ability to question the authorities, to question what you were being told, was never there before. 1950s, as we were just using as an example, no internet, very little phones and communication. Worldwide, would they have the Morse code and shit like that there, and the wives were still at home making the food and cooking, not allowed to do jobs and things like that. It was a completely different time.
Well, there was, it's funny you talk about technology like that. There was this book, sci-fi book comedy, but still sci-fi, by Robert Asprin. It was the Fool's Company series. And at one point, they described this device that the richest guy in the universe has, where it can access all this information, all of the information in the world. It can buy things. It can do, and they're basically describing like a laptop computer or a smartphone.
Yeah.
And they say that it costs more money than anything else in the universe, having this source of information right in your hands like that. And I'm sitting there going, that book was written in 1990, and that seems so outlandish. Now, no one even thinks about it. You know, I mean, 5-year-olds have a phone now. It's crazy. And I love it, but it's just like I hate to use words like the future is now, but it kind of is.
Yeah, well, there's certain things that we see in movies that did and didn't happen. You know, Back to the Future, obviously we don't have flying cars, but you look at Star Trek, not only did we get flip phones, but we're now bored and moved on with flip phones. Flip phones were so 1990, you know, it's...
Well, I get the impression that the people who designed the flip phone were Trekkies, and that's why they did it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in a way, I wonder how much more protected my phone's screen would be if I could flip something over it.
Yeah, well, they've now got them phone books, them wee books that they make in the smartphones. I think they're fucking stupid, but... So, Kate, the animation project you're working on at the minute, to move away ever so slightly from the atheism, because as you say, you're trying to work now on the animation, and this episode is about you and what you're doing. So, what is it about? What is your main loves? Like, I know it's sci-fi, it's like a story, sort of old school, going back to the parodies of science fiction, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, there was a time when people would actually take it seriously, when you had rings around everything and everyone had Saturn or an atom on their shirt, you know, very sort of Jetsons and
Yes.
Futurama and that style. But these days it's parody, it's satire. You can't do that look without people going, yeah, let's make fun of it, right? But I always thought it was really cool looking. I always wanted people to take it seriously. So that's kind of what I'm doing, at least in terms of a visual style. Story-wise, it's actually kind of an origin story, and I may have to continue it in another format because animation is so labor-intensive, and never mind casting this thing, which was like a 6-month process, casting it.
Yeah.
But it's like, basically it's about humanity, earthlings, because you got to call them earthlings if you're going to do it pulp style. It can't be humans. They have not been able to get past Mars yet. Like, it would take so many years just to get to Jupiter, and so much money and equipment. And they travel between Earth and Mars and Venus using what I'm calling fold gates, you know, like folding space.
Oh, yeah,
Everyone
yeah,
says jump gates or hyper gates. I figure fold gate makes sense. And so this guy is basically going on a quest to retrieve a device that was stolen, that his friend and mentor, the professor, is going to use to create a new drive that will let people get past Mars. But like I say, it was stolen, so the whole story is about getting it back from the people who stole it. But I mean, the basic idea is, hey, this guy is going to boldly go like in Star Trek, but in a more Star Wars style ship. And so it's leading up to his future adventures exploring the solar system. Now, of course, it's very pulp style. So, you know, Venus is populated by hot alien women. Mars has, you know, like the grays with the eyes, you know, those guys, the anal probing guys, those guys. Those are the inhabitants of Mars. Because I basically said, look, this isn't science fiction. This is science fiction, you see. And if I'm going to take that kind of creative license, well, how many moons does Jupiter have? A lot. There's a lot of adventure to be had throughout the solar system. If I'm willing to take real science and say, screw this crap, I'm just making something up. My world will have an internal consistency, but it's not going to conform to the real world. Because people, like, they seem to insist on more and more realism out of their sci-fi these days, and I think it actually suffers for it in many ways. I'm like, you know, if people are going to bitch that starships aren't moving according to exact Newtonian physics, I'm like, what is wrong with you people? Come on, have a little fun, will ya? But whatevs. That's basically the thing.
No,
I
I can
mean,
definitely
what
agree
it
with you
is.
in that there. You know, you've got people like Neil deGrasse Tyson who has, you know, when a new science fiction movie comes out, he goes on to Twitter and debunks it, all the science straight away. That's what he does. And people follow him and love it and like it and share it and all that there. It's entertainment for people. But I can definitely see the appeal of just going, fuck it. Throw it all out the window. If I want this thing to just go from there to there, I'll make up a full gate. Because that's cool. And it sounds cool. And if you can make it look cool, it'll be entertaining. It doesn't need to be scientifically factual.
Yeah, and I mean, basically, what I'm going for is not hard sci-fi, but rather space opera.
Space opera, yes, well, like Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, like, okay, don't get me started on those people who try to call it space fantasy. Screw you, it's space opera. Don't make me come over there. But other than that, yeah, I mean, in that style and the style of things like Captain Future and Captain Video and all of those, you know, early Flash Gordon.
I was a big fan of Flash Gordon now, yes. Did you always have a love for science, though? You know, to flash back a wee bit to the atheism and Christianity, were you raised a Christian? Did you find a love?
Oh gosh, no.
No.
I was raised, I was raised by hippies, and
You
my
can't
mom's
tell.
side of the family is culturally Jewish rather than like actually religious. You know, they have the Jewish accents, the sort of New York State, upstate New York accents. Occasionally, we might give people Hanukkah presents, that kind of thing. You know, there's a lot of food involved, a lot of Jewish food involved, but really it's just a cultural thing. Now, my dad's side of the family, on the other hand, Sicilian Catholics. And my dad was raised Catholic. And when he got to be an adult, he said, oh, screw this crap. And then went on this religious odyssey through most of his adulthood, where he tried every religion under the sun. Now, he didn't make my mom and me come with him while he was on this journey. So I saw a lot of religion without actually participating in the religion. Like through my childhood, I watched what my dad was doing.
So you were
And I
educated on
think-
multiple religions then.
Well, I mean, more than anything else, seeing a lot of religion is one of the things that can make a person not be religious, I think.
Yes.
And the truth is that when I started making my videos and my dad found them and started watching them, well, let's just say I deconverted my dad. My dad's an atheist because of me. So there's that. Like, there's so many stories of people converting from their parents' religion because, well, they realize it's bullshit. My dad, on the other hand, kind of, I mean, I'm not calling atheism a religion, but he kind of converted to mine in, you know, the
Well,
sense
that's
of,
it. You know, as him going through it individually, getting to, you know, actually experience it. You know, it's a lot more overwhelming for the person individually whenever these things are going on. If you're surrounded by 50, 60 people and they're telling you this thing, it can be a point where you would be susceptible to the ideas, where from your point of view, you're watching this person, knowing what he was before and before and before, with all the different times that it happened, and objectively being able to watch it happen. It's a different experience altogether.
yeah. So, I mean, in a weird way, and I've said this many times before, I hear all of the deconversion stories from YouTube atheists. You know, like you look at someone like Telltale, and he's always talking about being an ex-Jehovah's Witness. And, you know, Mr. Atheist is always talking about Mormonism and all of that stuff. And you hear all these stories people have about coming out of religion. It all sounds like really dramatic and stuff. And here I am going, yeah, I don't have a deconversion story. And
Yeah.
I just, you know, and in a way, I feel a little left out at times, just because everyone else can come together on these experiences. And I'm just like, yeah, I was always, whatevs. You know, it's all you can do.
Yeah, no, I can appeal a wee bit to that because I left quite young. I was in around the age of 11 or so when I left. So, you know, I didn't go through the growing up and the high school and stuff like that and all these persecutions that people felt and things like that. My mother was quite liberal. She was quite like yourself. She would educate us and show us, and, you know, if you want to go, you can go. If you don't, you don't. Think for yourself and these sort of things. And I left the religion when I was 11, so people have these stories and these experiences, and as you say, you can feel a wee bit left out. Personally, for me, the reason I stuck on it is just because it was interesting to me. It's once you have these questions about life, the meaning and all that sort of shit, it always does boil down to these sort of philosophical questions and, you know, God and why we're here. And I think that even though we would all class ourselves underneath the umbrella of atheism, I think that we like in the community to have just conversations as well about other things. It's not always about God and that. And, you know, people like Critical Cripple, I could talk to about lots of things. You know, we could spend 20 minutes, an hour talking about how AI and cars work. And it's finding someone in the community that has that idea and the way that they can think. Even though we found each other through the atheism, it's good to have that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just had someone on my Twitter page say, when did your channel become political? Because I'd made a post about statues of Confederate generals being pulled down. And I was like, you realize this isn't on my channel, right? This is Twitter. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, apparently some people are boggled that I don't live, eat, and breathe atheism 24/7, which I understand. I mean, on the internet, a lot of people just assume that all they ever see is all you ever are.
Yeah.
But it's not true. We all know it isn't.
It can be very blindsiding, though. I know a few people in the community. Omegon, he has 3 channels. You know, one that he does gaming on, one that he reads on, and one that he does political views on. He separates everything because for that reason. And he probably has overlap between viewers, but there will be a large section of his viewership is only for that channel. Is only for this. You know, it's not called Omegon Does Politics. It's a completely different name, so nobody would even know. And you do niche that argument or that audience down.
I have a second channel. It is primarily for gaming, but I never use it. It just, like, it's not my passion. I love to play video games, but playing video games for other people to watch, number one, it boggles me that anyone wants to see that. But even so, it just, I can't get enthusiastic about it. It's not as cool as some of the other stuff I do. At least not to me, anyway. I don't enjoy the process as much as perhaps I might.
100% agree. I've got MathPig 2 for gaming, and there's maybe 10 or 15 videos on it, and in the space of a year. Gaming's not so much a big thing for me. I've recently got StarCraft 2, so I've been enjoying StarCraft 2. It was StarCraft the original was massive for me when I was a kid, but you know, I've played it, you play it, you know, it's grand, it's fun, it's enjoyable, but as you say, it's weird that people want to watch it. Sometimes if I'm feeling lonely or something like that, I want a bit of banter, I load up on the other channel and, you know, just a game to hang out with your friends. So it's like you're sitting in the living room gaming with your mates, because obviously the channel's not as big. Only your loyal people that, you know, are interested and want to know what's going on do actually see this other side of you. Like, so I have it for that, but yeah, I can definitely understand where you're coming from. One channel, one view, that's what you give out, that's what people expect from you.
To something that Evolution False
Asshole
said.
104. He's referred to as Asshole 104.
Okay, well, he deleted it anyway, so I guess it doesn't matter. It was an invitation to be on some show or other, and I was going to address the maybe tonight part, and I'm like, this is my second live stream of the day, so
well,
not
just
today.
Just to say, Kate, that do not bother, not a waste of your time. He has the control of the mute button in there, and he'll just mute you and shout at you. Waste of your time.
I've had that experience before. I don't know if you've seen the video, but I was in the park and Saiten Bruggenkate was like up on a literal soapbox with a microphone. And there was a microphone for the people coming by if they wanted to ask questions. I was asking him some very pointed questions and offering some very pointed let's say refutations, if not actual debunkings of the logic of what he said. And he turned the microphone off on me when he knew he couldn't control the conversation the way he wanted.
Yeah, it's a waste of time. And saying that, I would like to have a conversation with Saiten Bruggenkate sometime. Now I could say that would be an interesting one. I'm not one for debating and shouting back and forth and stuff. I think it's a waste of time with certain people, but it would be interesting to find out, you know, the who, why, what, and where about where he is and why he is there. Because that's what I like about a channel, having this and having that. I'm not going to come down with debates. You know, I would like to have people on to have conversations to find out where they are and why they are there.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting how so many of the stories are the same, because when you come across that one that's different, it's kind of a thrill. Like I can't remember the last time I made a video about someone who had said something I'd never heard before.
Exactly. That's why I just, you speak of his name, I even think of his name, and he turns up. Richard is here. Richard has a very different point of view. And whenever I first met Richard on Skylar Fiction's channel, that's the first thing I wanted to do, was just get to know Richard more and get to talk to him more. And from 1 or 2 interviews on his channel, we then come up with an idea of doing a series. We've now been doing it for 7 months, once a week. You know, and once you find that different point of view, as you say, from this stance, it's definitely interesting. You can ask different questions, you can get different points of view back, and it's nice to find someone, not to use a bad phrase to insult anyone, but it's nice to find someone who's not a sheep that just repeats and repeats and repeats the same stuff you've heard over and over and over again.
Well, I mean, like, the only adaptability I've seen from religious people, at least that I can think of, is with the Kalam cosmological argument. Because when it was pointed out that not everything has a beginning, they started to say, well, things that begin to exist have an essence, like you began to exist when sperm met egg. And I'm like, but all of the matter that made me up was already there, so I didn't begin to exist. I'm just matter that changed. And they're like, well, you know, and the point is, though, that originally they didn't see the flaws in the argument, so they had to adapt it. Now, of course, a lot of them will say, no, we just rephrased it to be more accurate. But a lot of them, like, clearly just sort of said, we don't have an answer to that, so we're going to change the argument. I don't know.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it still doesn't leave it open to the Christian God. It leaves it open to multiple, you know, it could be anybody, but it's definitely a refining, and it's good to see that development in that. You know, it's good to see development even in a personal nature from people. Having a conversation once with someone 6 months down the line, and maybe a year down the line you have another one, and you can see the development from things that you've said to them. Because the whole idea of this is not to convert people. It's not to say you're wrong. It's to get people to leave the conversation asking themselves questions.
Well, I mean, yes and no. I've often said that if religious people can share and play nicely with the other kids, I don't care what the hell else they do. You know, it's the harm of religion that makes me want to debunk it, because I don't know how else to get religious people to behave themselves without telling them they're wrong, and all of the misbehavior you've done is not from God, but rather from humans. It's your own idea, your own fault. You're not following a mandate, a divine mandate. So, like, if I can convince them somehow to stay religious if they want to, but just not be jerks to other people, I consider that acceptable.
Exactly.
Whereas there's probably a lot of folks out there who are like, no, you're not allowed to be a believer, or at least you really, 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 really shouldn't. So I don't know. It's
no, well, I can get where you're coming from. You know, getting someone into that conversation and down to the basis of back and forth and on the topics that they agree with. At least if you say, if you can't dare to convert them, as we're not here to convert them, you can at least show them a different way of thinking, show them different faults. And at the end of the day, it's not a problem if they want to stay religious, they want to still worshipping this God. But if we can teach them to think a wee bit better and see different faults in things, they may be able to see faults in other things. And live just a wee bit better. See, you know, when there's problems in the news and false titles, and seek out the truth more so.
Well, if they want to, like, believe that homosexuals are of the devil and going to hell or whatever, you know, okay, fine, believe that. Just, you know, limit it to believing it. You know, don't call people names. Don't try to deny them jobs or rights or benefits or any of this stuff. You know, just sort of grind your teeth and go, freaking homosexuals, and leave us alone.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, is that so difficult? I will cheerfully leave Christians alone as long as they're leaving everyone else alone. As long as I don't feel the need to defend anybody from religious abuses, not just Christians. You know, if I don't feel that need, I can shut up. You know, put me out of a job by being nice.
No, well, again,
you know, be civil to everyone else and put me out of work.
Well, you see, that's the problem. A lot of people in power and a lot of people that make the rules and a lot of people at the top of the ladder, so to speak, at the top of the hierarchy, making an example or making a bad example because of this. You know, there's always going to be hate, there's always going to be problems, but what we're trying to do is limit the strength that they have, limit the ability that they have to put their beliefs upon us through rules and regulations and things like that. As you say, everybody is equal, everybody is nice to be free. You know, we all want to have the same choices. Using the Black Lives Movement as an example, we obviously have racist cops over here in the UK, but with the better training and the limiting of their power, the fact that they always aren't carrying an armed weapon and things like that, we've limited what they can do. So of course there's going to be racism in it, but they don't have the ability to just go forward and do what they do in America. We've definitely put a cap on it. We've left everyone as equals as best we can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it seems like an egalitarian society is in everybody's interest. But the fact that some people don't want that they love their hierarchy and people staying in their place and all of that stuff, they just love it to death. I mean, what can you do about people like that? There's really no way beyond keeping them out of power to deal with people who think that some folks just belong at the bottom of the pyramid.
Yeah, well, that's it. It's, I'm not part of any minority group. I'm one of the worst. I'm a white cis male, so people. I can identify as best I can with people through communication and knowing them and hearing the stories, but it's hard to affect change because these people are in power, and it's not that we're trying to, not trying to be more powerful. We're trying to be as equals. And they do not like to lose the power. It's not that we're trying to take anything away from them. We're trying to bring the balance back to what it should be, to equal footing for everyone.
Well, the problem, I'm a big advocate of a series on YouTube called the Alt-Right Playbook, where it describes the differences in mindset between the left and the right. And the thing is that appealing to these people as, hey, we just all want to be equals, that is so antithetical to their worldview that like, according to studies, they think that some people have a destiny. They think that there are sharks and minnows, that there are some people who are just built to be in charge. Yeah. And that like you either serve them in a slightly lower tier on the pyramid, or you are there like whipping boys and girls to kick around and all of that stuff. And that's the way it should be, because that's how you are. That's your nature. And like, some people might work really hard and get up on the pyramid, higher up on that hierarchy, but those are the rare people who manage to do it. It's like, one of the things that's mentioned in this series is that a lot of left-wing people look at right-wing people and say, they really want to be lefties. They just haven't heard the message the right way yet. And it's simply not true.
Yeah. No, when people have ground into certain beliefs and certain things, these, regardless of what it is, whether religion or racism or anything like that, when you've heard it your entire life, it's ground into you. It's going to take an awful lot for someone to change.
Yeah. And I mean, I could name some ways that I've changed, that I've come around to certain things, but most of them were not super significant. Being raised, again, by hippies, by like uber left-wingers, a lot of people rebel against their parents, but that's ways where we very much agree, me and my parents, on equal rights, egalitarianism, making our differences unremarkable. I mean, that should be the goal of any equality movement, is making our differences unremarkable, insignificant when it comes to things like who gets to have a job.
Yes. Yeah. And as we were mentioning before we came on stream, recently Netflix, BritBox, and one other thing have taken down Little Britain. They've taken down the League of Gentlemen, and they've taken down, what was that other one? Bo Selecta. They've taken them down because when they were now, from our point of view in this time and stage, they were racist. And as we discussed, the differences between, the comedy was there to pick on everybody, to make fun of everybody, to have a joke and a laugh at everybody. And the fact that maybe 2 or 3 characters in the show of 20 may have been of colour, that's now racist. But the whole point is that they didn't see it. You're picking on everybody, like the South Park rule. Picking everyone as the same. Make fun of everyone the same.
Well, and one of the things I was mentioning, and it's actually very difficult to get a straight answer on this question, but I was asking it as a question, is it okay for a white character on a show to do blackface, and then if they get their ass beat for it, or if they're shown as the villain, where the message is blackface is wrong, kids, is that okay? Like the example I was giving was an episode of Scrubs where JD and Turk had basically race reversed each other, where Turk was in whiteface and JD was in blackface, and I forget which characters they were supposed to be, but they were supposed to be like characters from some old 70s TV show or something. Mm-hmm. And they were going to a party at a fraternity that was mainly for black people. And then, like, when they knock on the door, Turk, for whatever reason, got distracted and had to walk away. So all these big, burly black guys see JD in blackface. They yank him through the door, beat him up, and then throw him out of a second-story window. And so clearly it's being shown, yeah, blackface bad. Is that okay to do that? Or is it always wrong across the board to do it?
Yeah, I would agree with you on that there. It's a very fine line that you have to think. But if we all agree, which we all should, that things like that are bad, as long as it's not being glorified. But the fact that we give that a stage or give that a platform does not mean that we necessarily agree with it, does not mean that we are necessarily glorifying and putting it up on a pedestal. We're putting it out there because it's happened. We can't get rid of the history that's been there. It's stupid because I do understand the people that's going through what they're going through right now. From the point of view that they have something there that is offensive to them in reference to maybe a statue or something like that, and it's very offensive and this, that, and the other. Take them down, don't destroy them. You take them down, put them somewhere. Put them in a specific park, put them in a museum. I don't agree with destroying them. I don't agree with having them out and paraded. But getting rid of them altogether and getting rid of the history, getting rid of the things that we have done and trying to change what the past is, I think that's fucking stupid.
Well, one of the things I said on Twitter just like an hour ago, I think, was that a statue is not history. A statue is a celebration of the person being depicted. Mm-hmm. And so I can understand why people want these monuments down. And someone on Twitter was like, well, but now people won't know that these things happen. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that the Germans took down all the statues of Hitler.
Yes.
And yet we know pretty darn well who he is. There's books, there's movies, there's documentaries about all of history.
Yeah.
And so, taking down a bunch of statues because we don't want to celebrate racists is not erasing history. And anyone who says so, they're probably just like doing some sort of spray and pray to find what argument sticks to let them keep their monuments up.
Well, no, I'm not saying that. I'm not going down that road. I don't think that, they just should be destroyed and ignored. I don't think our history should be ignored is the point I'm trying to make. As you say, we all know where Hitler is and we all know who he was and things like that there. And we should definitely be aware of it. I just don't, yeah, I'm wording myself wrongly, so I will refuse to dig a deeper hole. I think the point I'm trying to make has been put across.
Sure, yeah. And in the meantime, my forearm is being licked by one of the most adorable cats in the world.
Oh, we'll bring the cat on. The cats always put the numbers up. Everybody loves the cat.
Well, I totally would, except if I pick her up, she'll decide not to stay on the lap. So she's very sensitive like that. And ever since I got the kitten, she's been sort of lap blocked by him a lot. So the fact that she's here now is a good thing. I don't want to interrupt her. Like, I might, if her cat tongue starts to be more sandpapery. My arm is already kind of red. But, I
have a question that's been popped in here from Amanda. What do you think about the shooting in Seattle autonomous zone?
Well, the thing is, I'm hearing very conflicting reports about it. Because apparently the police report said that the protesters violently wouldn't let them in. But from what I'm hearing from the protesters is by the time the police got there, the people who'd been shot had been driven by private vehicles to a nearby hospital. Now, I have to say, I don't think you should bring anyone to Harborview. You should go to the UW Medical Center, but that's a separate issue entirely. Harborview sucks. But anyway, yeah, they... So what I'm hearing from the actual people in the actual protest zone is that The official story is bunk. That like someone had, yes, shot 2 people, one of whom died and the other's in critical condition, but the occupants of the zone, they stepped up and did what needed to be done to to rescue the people that had been shot. Nobody was arrested, nobody was caught with a gun, the one who did the shooting. But as I understand it, in the aftermath, people are starting to put together some sort of committee, and yeah, people have armed themselves, but for the most part, it's just been clearly we need protection. And I'm not saying anything conspiracy theory-y. I'm speculating on the possibility of the shooting being staged by people who want a violent reaction from the folks in the zone.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they're going to get it. You know, I like knowing Seattle as I do, having lived there for 20 years, knowing the people who live on Capitol Hill, knowing my friends who are there right now, I'm pretty sure the reaction is not going to be like a big armed riot the way the rest of the country thinks it will. It's just not going to happen.
Personally, it's not a topic I know myself. I haven't caught up on it, so I have no comments on it.
I think the only problem I have with the protesters there is that they decided to change the name from Chaz to Chop. Like it used to be the Capitol Hill was an autonomous zone, and now it's the Capitol Hill something protest. I'm blanking on what the O stands for, but I think that's a blunder because chop sounds violent. Chop sounds like what you do with a knife or like karate or whatever. It sounds like something that can be easily exploited by the right wing, going, see how violent they are? They're called chop.
Yeah.
Where, you know, and I had someone say, yeah, but Chaz just sounds like your white friend, and this is not a white protest. And I'm like, well, maybe, but I still think the messaging is a mistake by calling it chop. That's like the only criticism I can level, because I hate to say it, the left has a serious PR problem. They need to run any slogan or movement name by a bunch of linguists and punsters first to see how it might be spun by the right wing.
Yeah.
Because let's say, you remember the guy with the snowball in Congress who was like, look, it's not global warming, I have a snowball, and they had to change it to climate change. And you know, if they called it or Black Lives Matter 2 instead of just Black Lives Matter, no one could have done All Lives Matter because that concept is included in the word 2. Of course, it also sounds a little weak and like pathetic to say, oh no, we matter too, we matter too. That may be the wrong message to send. So Black Lives Matter makes more sense just in terms of a we're not meek sense, but it was spun. And so I'm thinking that the left wing needs a better PR department. I mean, hell, coach, put me in. I can do this better because I love to futz about with language, and I can probably come up with better slogans that can't be as easily exploited.
Yeah, no, I can totally get you in that. Things that, even just purely from a marketing sense, you know, the first series I did with Richard, we sat down and we went back and forth about trying to what actually name, you know, the thing. And we called it a history of, and we put a history of in inverted commas, because, you know, it's not the history of, possibly it may be, or whatever it is, and it's the history of the interstellar planets. And we included Jupiter in that because calling it, you know, the 6 front 4 planets or this plus Jupiter, or it doesn't make sense, but, you know, it doesn't sound good, doesn't ring off the tongue as well. But calling it the history of the interstellar planets, that sounds cool. We just tell everybody Jupiter's included later. And I had a full argument with a guy that came back at me that my title didn't make sense. For like an hour, I'm arguing with him. Did you just not get the point? It's marketing, man.
Well, and you know, the thing is, they call it Jupiter, but I've never seen it Jupit. I'll just see myself out.
No. It's funny, but it's probably not funny because there's actually a person in our Discord whose name is Jupit, Jupit.
I don't know. I've had some friends call me the queen of the dad jokes, and that's an example of what they mean.
Well, there's a reason for me not laughing, and that's because I do actually know a Jupit.
Okay.
So that's
all right.
The only reason. She's a very feisty person. We used to call her Cerberus because she's the furry version of Cerberus, the 3-headed hound from hell.
You
But
know, the first time I heard of the concept of furries, I hadn't seen any pictures. So what I was picturing in my head, completely different from the reality. Like, I didn't picture people walking around looking like sports mascots or Disney characters or whatever. I was picturing people more like the cast of Cats. Like the stage Cats, not the movie they just did. Like I pictured more like animal human hybrids rather than anthropomorphic animals.
yeah,
And when I finally saw an actual fursuit, I was like, oh, wow, was I wrong?
yeah, I loved Beast Wars growing up, and old game on the PS1 where you hit a button, you went beast mode, and you turned into like a half animal, half man thing. It was very cool. You get to kick the fuck out of each other. It was very fun. Not what furries look like at all.
I'm trying to think of a good example of a fictional character that looks like what I pictured a furry looking like. And seriously, all I got right now is the cast of Cats. That's all I got. I'm sure, God, there's got to be someone, but it's not coming to me.
That is one thing I can guarantee you. No matter how much money there is in the world, I will not watch Cats. No.
Ooh, I don't know. If I was given enough money to fund my own space program or even just make a full-on movie, I'd watch Cats for that. Hell,
Well,
I've watched
it's a
The
statement more so than a principle. You get the idea, but fuck no. No.
I mean, I've got a few movies like that, but there's a few where it was just an endurance trial to finish them. And you probably should have paid me my admission price. Like I say, to watch The Room, for example. I mean, I had to force myself to finish it. I wanted to turn it off so bad, but I'm like, I need this experience because I keep hearing about this shit movie and I want to know what's up. So
No, yeah, I've watched. People will say that I watch some shit movies. I think they're fucking fantastic. But that's just a matter of opinion. Old sci-fi. I like old sci-fi movies. I think they're that bad. They're great. I
well,
don't.
how old is old in this example?
Oh, I'm trying to think of the oldest sci-fi. Well, just an old sci-fi movie I've watched quite recently would be Enemy Mine. Now that doesn't refer back to anything that
Okay,
bad
so
that it's good.
80s then.
Well, I'm 83. I'm only a baby.
Well, I mean, I'm 75. That was still Enemy Mine was part of my childhood. So
Yeah, it was just part of. I watched it growing up as well. That's why I liked
because
it and went
I
back.
remember when all these movies came out in the wake of Star Wars, where they had like a third the budget and no idea what they were doing. And then there were a few gems in that mix. And Enemy Mine was definitely one of those.
Yeah,
It's
it
a
was
very interesting story.
such a good storyline. The whole idea behind it, and it's too short. You start watching it, it starts to get fucking interesting, and then it ends, and it's yeah.
Well, and Louis Gossett Jr., you'd never know that was him. Never.
No.
And he's amazing at it too.
It's definitely one of my favoriteest old movies.
Although one thing that's kind of fun, like for those who don't know, that it takes place during a war between these humans and these aliens. And at one point, there's a scene on a ship where these two guys are disposing of dead bodies, and they're looking at one. They go, "Oh, this one's an atheist. No music." As they're disposing of the guy.
That's
And
right. The scene of the going down at the start. Yeah, no music.
oh, it's so terrible, but I mean, it's still funny. Enemy Mine and another gem, Star Chaser: The Legend of Orin, which is a complete and utter Star Wars ripoff, but that's part of its charm. Like at one point they actually, when Obi-Wan is describing Mos Eisley to Luke, where he says, you'll never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. Well, in Star Chaser, at one point, the smuggler character, who was definitely not Han Solo, says to the main character, who was definitely not Luke Skywalker, Toga Togo, the thickest den of thieves this side of Bordegon. And I'm like, yeah, you totally lifted that line and made it your own, but still, it was so much fun, that movie.
No, not one I know of now. I thought you were going to say The Last Starfighter.
Oh, well, I adore The Last Starfighter. I mean, have you seen the tattoo?
Exactly.
So,
Last Starfighter rocks. Oh,
Yeah.
now I'm just thinking of all my childhood cartoons and I've totally lost track of the entire interview.
Oh, that's all right. I mean, I could probably talk sci-fi and space opera for ages.
Manda's your
So,
woman to talk to for that. She definitely goes down the Star Wars route. It is ingrained in her son's blood, so partially ingrained in her blood then as well.
well, I mean, in the side chat, there was the whole thing like I went off on people who call Star Wars fantasy, and there was a whole big exchange in there. But consider this: Seven Samurai is clearly a samurai movie set in medieval Japan, and then The Magnificent Seven is the same story but told in the American West. You know, like cowboys and stuff. And no one would say, oh, that's a samurai movie in the West if they just saw it cold and didn't know what it was. And then you've got Battle Beyond the Stars. Again, exactly the same story, but set in a more space opera, Star Warsian universe. And no one's going to say, aha, samurai movie. You know, they're going to say, oh, look, sci fi. So, in my never humble opinion, setting matters far, far more than the story being told or the characters. Because, you know, if someone were to just show you a still frame of Star Wars, no one's going to go, aha, a fantasy movie, put it on the same side of the shelf with Lord of the Rings. It doesn't work that way, you know?
Yeah, well,
just
it's not the
tell an
story.
entire Star Wars story without a single Force user, without a single lightsaber. You could do a story just about the rebellion, and no one would tell you it's not sci-fi. Furthermore, people will say, "Well, Star Trek isn't science fantasy." Oh yeah, well, it's got psychics, it's got people with godlike powers. Hello, Q. It's got like the Vulcan mind meld. These things are not scientific; they're clearly magical. But nobody says Star Trek is fantasy. So don't even get me started on this shit. I could rant for hours.
Well, I can definitely agree with you. You could move the story from setting to setting. I don't think, the setting obviously changes. The setting is important, but the story does remain the same as in the highlighted parts. It's not a samurai got from A to B. It's a person got from A to B. The story still would be there. The point that the story is trying to make, what it's trying to convey to you, the core would still be there, even though it's in a different setting.
That's why I say setting matters like a lot more. I mean, like I don't know anybody who would take Star Wars and put it on the same shelf as, say, oh, I don't know. Well, Lord of the Rings, Dragon Slayer, Willow, any of those. You know, you're going to find it on the same shelf with like Star Trek and, I mean, I don't know, Babylon 5 or whatever. So it's just, I think it's a category error to call it fantasy.
Yeah, I just enjoy watching movies. Stupider, the older, the funny, as long as it's entertaining. I'm a movie goer more so than a series watcher. I don't watch TV anymore. I recently got a letter through the fucking post going, it's been 2 years since you cancelled your TV license. Are you sure you want to keep it cancelled? Yeah, fucking sure I am. Not paying that money to watch nothing. It's stupid.
Well, I will admit I've missed a lot by not watching television. I mean, there's a lot of news I haven't heard of, a lot of products I didn't know exist, and so many shows that I haven't seen or even heard about where, like, I'll find them on Netflix or Hulu or something. I'll go, gosh, what's this? You know, so, I mean, in a way, I do sort of feel that loss because, like I say, I'm an animator and I love to watch other people's stuff, to get story ideas, to get storytelling, like technique ideas, to see how they do their special effects and try to figure out how to replicate them myself, things like that. So, I mean, in a way, I feel the loss of television like that. But at the same time, I don't know. I'm not sure. I like streaming services. I like on-demand services. So
the only thing I can think of generally that I miss from television would be, you can't even get it anywhere else. It's a BBC Northern Ireland show called The Nolan Show. And it's a guy from over here and he screams at our politicians and calls them assholes. And he's quite good at it and has a show once a week, maybe 10 episodes for over the year, twice a year maybe. And it keeps us up to date with the politicians and what's going on. And I enjoyed that purely from a fucking... just a mindless throne watching it. It's entertaining for people to get screamed at, especially politicians in power. It's...
Well, I mean, there are some British shows that I remember enjoying that I cannot find for love or money. Like, it's not streaming, you can't get the discs, and if you can, they're in PAL format, et cetera, et cetera. Like, for example, The Young Ones. I remember watching that when I was in high school in the early 90s and thinking it was great. I cannot get my hands on The Young Ones at all. Just can't do it. Oh, at all. I mean, like, I suppose I could pirate it, but if I wanted to get it legitimately, can't get the discs. Like I would pay for the discs, but they're not available. I cannot find them, and certainly not in a format that Americans can watch. And I went digging around for anyone who's streaming it, can't find it. What can you do?
I'll send you ones from Britain, and then you can just play them on your computer and change the format in your computer. It's probably just what you're going to have to do. Amazon.co.uk. Don't go.com.
Even not necessarily British shows, like they're until Christopher Titus put it up on his YouTube channel because, hey, everyone needs to be entertained during the pandemic, I couldn't get my hands on his sitcom either. And then he started putting him up on YouTube, and I was like, rock! I've been wanting to see this for so long.
Yeah, no, it can be limiting. It's sometimes when you go to look for something really, really old, but if it's old enough, you'll find it on YouTube. You know, I wanted to go back and watch a lot of younger cartoons with my wee girl when she was growing up. I'm fucking not going to watch the shite that comes out now. I wanted to watch Ulysses, you know. She didn't like it, though. Got only about 5 or 6 episodes into Ulysses, if you remember that. It was more of a, to be gender-specific, boys show. Sci-fi, but with the gods of Greek gods. They actually existed, and they were in spaceships, and Ulysses, yeah. It was a good show. She didn't like that much, but we watched Care Bears and things like that. This is all on YouTube because it's so old, you know. So look on YouTube. If it's been out long enough and it passed the date, could find it on YouTube.
Well, I know that there is a website out there, and I don't think they put their videos on YouTube. I'm not sure where they are exactly, but it's nothing but Blake 7. Which I'd never seen before. I got through the first episode and thought this was pretty good, although those aren't even special effects. Those are Xeroxes cut out of paper. Still, I mean, I found myself kind of enjoying it, and I want to see more of it. But, you know, it's hard to find anywhere except for that one website that carries all of it.
No, I was very, very impressed with the idea of going back, because when you watch some of the older movies and older sci-fi and things like that, it was guys in suits, you know, and sometimes maybe the suits weren't that great, but sometimes the fucking suits were fantastic.
Well, you remember those guys? They were on Doctor Who, and they were like, it was Tom Baker era, and they're like these underwater aliens, and they just sort of look like a weird orange, like traffic cone with suckers coming out the edge. You know the guys I'm talking about? Don't
like Doctor Who at all. Dr. Dave. I don't like Doctor Who at all.
Well, regardless, that was some damn good makeup for the time.
Yeah, and the ability and skills that we would have now to go through makeup and actually maybe a suit with a touch of CGI just to make, you know, get rid of the suit look and make it actual skin look, if you know what I mean. But it would be. I really liked the Dark Crystal, the way they went back to the 80s with the puppets. I thought that was fantastic. Thoroughly enjoyed that.
Okay, I've only watched the original movie. I haven't tried the series just because usually when you make a continuation of something decades after the original, it tends to stink. Like they tend to not hark back to the spirit of the original, the feel of the original. Like the experience watching it is not the same. You know, like you couldn't put them side by side and say, yes, this is part of the same series. Like I'm a huge, huge, huge fan of Tron.
Yes.
And Tron Legacy was not even Tron.
No.
It really wasn't.
No,
you know,
really
the suits glowed, and that was about it. It was just so bad.
My favorite part of Tron Legacy is the soundtrack.
I enjoyed it as a standalone movie, but as a sequel to Tron, forget about it. Yeah. And so I've been approaching this whole like Dark Crystal series. It was a series, right? I've been approaching that with some trepidation because I'm worried that it will, like so many other things, it'll end up nostril raping my childhood, and I don't want that. Not again.
But the original wasn't as big to me growing up. I barely remember it. So that's maybe why I enjoyed, you know, I did go back and watch the original after I watched the series, enjoyed both of them, but wasn't as big in my childhood as possibly it was for yourself. So that I can see where that would appeal, or, you know, you would lose that touch. It's like, you fucking ruined it for me. I can totally understand that, yeah. Watching Dragon Ball Z and having a Dragon Ball Z fan for absolute years, getting very annoyed when they retcon a few things. It's like, no, you can't do that. It's no.
Well, I mean, okay, I never really vocalized it at the time, but in my head, I was throwing a gigantic tantrum when they started making the colors on Superman's outfit more dull, less saturated, less bright, more sort of dim and grim. Because that's not the Superman I grew up with. The Superman I grew up with was, I mean, yeah, he was kind of an overgrown Boy Scout, you know, the sort of like corn-fed Kansas kid, that kind of thing. But at the same time, you know, he wasn't Batman. He wasn't supposed to be Mr. Grim and grouchy. He wasn't supposed to be dark colors on his suit. You know, when they changed the look of the helmets for the stormtroopers in the Disney Star Wars movies, I was like, what the frick are you people doing? Come on, don't fix what isn't broken.
Oh, no.
So,
no, can't say Disney and Star Wars in the same sentence. I'm not. No, not again. There's too much Badger.
No,
Have you met
I'm
Badger?
right there with you. But point being, though, is like, I like it when people pay respects to the original, where they go, okay, you remember when you were a fan of this way back in your childhood? Well, here's more of it. And here's more of it the way you remember it. Yeah. You know?
No, I can agree with you. They noticed that. Yeah.
They always have to change something. It was like when they made Star Trek movies based on Next Generation, they had to change all the uniforms. For what reason? Couldn't you just use the uniforms they used on the show? Would that be such a burden?
Bigger budget.
But the budget doesn't have to be spent on uniforms. It can be spent on special effects.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, and that's another thing I wanted to mention when we were talking about like guys in suits playing the aliens. Honestly, the only thing that I think really necessitates CGI characters is when they're not human-esque bipeds. You know, if they walk on their toes like most quadrupeds do with their back feet, if they you know, maybe they're not even, you know, bilaterally symmetrical. Maybe they're radially symmetrical. I don't know. But having CG characters to portray things that a guy in a suit couldn't, I think is amazing. Like, I don't know if you love the Orville the way I love the Orville.
Yeah.
But they've got Yaphet, the guy who basically looks like a blob. And at first, when I saw the previews for the Orville, I thought he was just going to be a big honking joke. But he's a real character in his own right, and they've done some very special things with the fact that he's not a bipedal humanoid, and I love it. Yeah,
no, he's as funny as fuck, and his charm, yeah, he's definitely got some charm.
Yep.
Well, we've been going an hour. Kate, is there anything else you would like to plug or push, or have you anything coming up?
Not really, no. I mean, the next time I see a video that desperately needs a debunking, there will be another video. Other than that, I don't have a lot to say that I haven't mentioned before. Just, you know, the animation stuff I'm working on and all of that. Oh, well, okay, there is one thing, and I mentioned this in my last video, is I kind of wanted, one of the theist arguments I hate so much is when they try to tell you what you're thinking. You know, where it's like, oh, you atheists are just thinking this and that and the other thing. And you know how I used to have my avatar Sandra in my videos instead of me on camera, and she would like do sort of these reactions, these mimings to what people were saying. I said that I wanted one of her as a referee to call fouls on people. And so I went and I actually looked up the NFL signal for unsportsmanlike conduct and animated Sandra blowing a whistle and making that signal so that the next time someone tries to tell me what I'm thinking, like they know my brain better than I do, I'm going to have to pull that one out and call foul. But other than that, I really don't have a lot to announce.
Definitely follow her on Twitter. Go and subscribe to her channel. Both the links are in there. You'll always find you on Diana's. Usually would find you on Diana's channel, the Lavender Lady. So if I haven't popped that, I'm sure Dave will find the link and pop it in the chat for everyone as well. You want to see more Kate, check out Diana as well. Always good people over there too.
Yeah, it's usually a pretty fun live stream. Sundays in the morning and Tuesdays at night, at least as far as the US is concerned.
Question from the chat. Richard Matson wants to know if you would be ever interested in having a chat with him.
I could. If I know who you are, it's not popping into my head, but I could do it.
Well, I will. I have the show on Thursday with Richard. Come round at 10 o'clock on Thursday. You can see what he's about, have a wee chat, ask some questions. Definitely get to know the man. As I say, been doing the show with him for 7-8 months now. Lots of fun doing it on a Thursday. I have that coming up on Thursday. I'm not sure who's happening next week. We're still settling a few dates and stuff. So other than that, Kate, thank you. Definitely, thank you very much.
Sure,
and
absolutely.
More people need to subscribe to Kate. More people need to give Kate some time and
do.
get Kate on. Definitely, yes.
That's just something that I wish I understood. Because like I say, I've been around for 13 years. My subscriber base is so small, and I don't know why. I mean, yes, I know I put some people off, but still, I mean, I don't know if it's an algorithm thing or if I should shake up my video making style or what. But I just, it's hard not to be bitter sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yes, definitely. Go round, give the woman a sub. So, on that note, what we will do is we will oink and out. We will see you back here on Thursday. And everybody, as always, thank you very much for coming. Shout out to my Patreons. Be Mindful, GeoSam, Mama. And definitely need to write this one down. Who's the other one? GeoSam, Mama, Brett. No, fucking lost it. Yeah, thanks to all my Patreons. Oink and out. Shit, fucking need to make a list. Right, everybody, thanks, bye-bye.
Have fun. If you can't be good, don't get caught.
Exactly. Sammy Jenkins. Yes, and the last one was Sammy. Thanks for Sammy.